All right, all right, all right. So, for my final project, we've been doing a lot with Pokemon for the last few lectures, and so I was thinking, okay, okay, something in the vein of Pokemon, and I landed on Yu-Gi-Oh! And compared to Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is an absolute mess. It's kind of funny, honestly. So, what I wanted to do specifically was I wanted to take a look at power creep in Yu-Gi-Oh! And for those of you that don't know, power creep is it's a thing that happens in a lot of long-running things. Basically, you just have to keep raising the stakes over and over and over and over and over again, and eventually, whatever came first is just peanuts compared to whatever's now. Think of, for example, the Marvel movies, right? So when Iron Man came out in 2008, the big bad guy of Iron Man 1 is just Jeff Bridges in a big clunky Iron Man suit, right? Um, but fast forward 12 something years, and in Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, the big bad guy is Thanos, the Mad Titan, who literally obliterates half of the universe. Uh, Jeff Bridges in an Iron Man suit can't even compare to Thanos. So you see how they keep raising the stakes. Well, that happens a lot in it happens a lot in games and card games, especially like Yu-Gi-Oh. Is it happens a lot. It generally happens where uh, the cards they release later, in order to incentivize people to buy the new cards, they have to get a lot stronger. So I wanted to take a look at that, and also the rule set in Yu-Gi-Oh has gotten absolutely absurd. It used to be pretty easy. Just you have your playing field. You got 10 slots to play cards. Your first five are monsters. Your back five are spell cards or trap cards or whatever. But they've added different types of deck. You can have like three decks in one game that you're playing, and one deck is for one specific attack field, one deck's for another. It's it's ridiculous. So I wanted to take a look at that, and what I found was this. All right, so it's not immediately obvious. Forgive me. I'm working with limited space right here. Like this square that you're seeing. That's all I have to work with. Don't ask. So let's get right into it. So up here in this, what's that? That's the top left corner right here. This is the disaggregated attack stats. These are each individual card's attack values. I should clarify this OCG date up here means original card game, as in this is what released in Japan, because it's Japanese. It came out in Japan first. We didn't start getting cards in the United States until 2002, whereas the Japanese had them in 1999. So as you can see here, we have a lot, and these are just normal monsters. This monster type selector applies to these top two ones up here. These are just normal monsters. We can change that. Yeah, see, there's so many different types of cards. You got fusion monsters, Gemini monster. It's absurd. So let's take a look at fusion monsters. We had a few in 1999, and generally speaking, it looks like they've stayed relatively consistent attack-wise. We get a few more. We get more releasing in later years, um, but generally, let's just stick with normal monsters for now. So they released a lot of normal monsters early on, and then as the years go on, they just scaled back on how many they released. Like in 2024, they only released two normal monsters. So let's take a look here. Let's IS Classic, the Blue Eyes White Dragon. Um, this, if you've seen the first episode of the show, you got Kaiba whipping out every Blue Eyes White Dragon that exists in the game. So you can see here he's got attack at 3,000, defense at 25, and so he looks like he was the strongest monster released in the first year. It looks like we got Cosmo Queen coming in second at 2,900. And then way down here, we got the Millennium Shield, which has no attack and 3,000 defense. So, let's move over to our defense. Here, the oranges are defense. So you can see for defense, we got the Millennium Shield up here. It had the most defense out of any monster cards in the first year release. And here's Blue Eyes White Dragon in second with 2,500. And then, again, as the years go on, they release less and less normal monsters. So if we look at, say, for example, ritual monsters, they don't have very many of those. Um, so it's a little bit easier to sort of see the distinctions. It looks like they stopped releasing ritual monsters after 2001. Um, trap cards don't have attack stats because they apply effects, yada yada yada. So um, yeah, I wanted to look at that, and these are all disaggregated values. These are on a per card basis. It's interesting to look at, but it's not really easy to see. Which brings me to this guy right here. These are the aggregated values. So basically, they took every single, and not just normal monsters, but like every card that had an attack value. They added it up, and here it is. So in 1999, the attack values of every card adds up to a little under 630,000, and the defense stats are a little under 585,000. So we had a lot of stuff releasing in 1999, and then in 2000, there's a massive decline. Just because they've when we see there's a pretty big decline until about 2006 is when it looks like it really started to jump up. 2006, 2008 ish. But they really uh, I guess they felt like they released too many monsters here, so they sort of scaled back a little bit until they started releasing them more and more and more. And again, over time, it looks like I was right about power creep because starting in 2008, we're going up, we're going up, we're going up. And from 2014 to 2019, we are we're releasing cards that are just stronger and stronger. Um, and we're blowing cards from 1999 out of the water. But granted, this is 20 years later, and then they start scaling back again. So this is just pure extrapolation on my part, but I would imagine uh, if we had another 10 years of data, we would see another trend like this where it goes down, and then it goes back up and up and up and up, and then it goes back down. Defense is this orange one. It kind of follows the same trend. It generally follows the attack, except for 2018, because from 2016 to 2017 there was a drop, which we can see reflected in the defense stats. But from 2017 to 2018 there was actually an increase, but we still declined in our defense values here. So the biggest gulf between attack and defense stats were for cards released in 2018. Which brings me to the final element of this delightful looking dashboard. This fella right here, what this is doing is this is showing us the card type doesn't matter here. This is what the year selector comes into play. And what it does is, so right now we're looking at 1999. There were 396 normal monster cards. This is more of an illustration as to how absurd the game has gotten. So we have a lot of normal monsters, some effect monsters, spell cards, fusion monsters. So we have one, two, three, four, five, six. We have 7 different card types releasing in the first year of the game. Let's jump to 2017. Oh my God, what happened? So they've released so many different types of cards as the game went on. I mean, that you could even see this. Let's not even go to 2017. Let's go to 2007. It's still relatively reasonable in 2007. It's getting a little out of hand in 2009. 2017 is absurd. There's so many different types of monsters. They're releasing less effect monsters um, overall, and then it's getting more absurd until 2024. It's ridiculous. Now, if you look at we're going to leave this dashboard for a moment. We're going to look at the source page. I have this delightful little counter up here. So in 99, they only had 7 different types of cards, and they released 623 total. And let's see, 2017, they released 641 different cards, and they had 22 different types of cards. So that just they're it's just absurd. You know, they released half the number of cards in 2001. We kind of saw this reflected in the aggregated graph where we saw that sharp dip after after 1999. So they're kind of cutting back on releasing cards, and then they're starting to scale back up as the years go on until 2000. We saw in 2017 they released more cards than they initially did in the first run. I don't think there was like a huge rebrand or like a reboot, goodness, or like a big reboot they wanted to do. But I do vaguely remember them starting to scale. This was around the time I got into high school, so I kind of remember them trying to scale things back up. Uh, 2020, they are cutting back on the number of types of cards, but it's still, you go from seven to now you're doubling that as of 2024. The game's getting absurd. The power creep is real. Although they did start off pretty high and then they really cut back immediately and they started getting back up there. Um, but yeah, so I just wanted to take a look at how Yu-Gi-Oh handled power creep. They have not handled it well. There's so many cards that are just banned from tournaments and whatnot just because they're absurdly ridiculous. And they're not even like attack cards anyway. It's like spell cards and stuff get banned too, just because the effects are ridiculous. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah. So this is my dashboard. I hope you enjoyed this explanation of Yu-Gi-Oh and how absurd and silly and not fun the game is to play now. Thank you very much for your time, and have a good day.